Alrighty, so we're recording. Everyone's on. It's 1:05. So I want to start by saying thank you so much for everyone that joined. This is very impromptu. So thank you for joining. I appreciate the enthusiasm. And for like the last couple of weeks, I've gotten like tons of questions about working in beauty or just like what it's like being a LinkedIn creator. And especially with like a lot of people interested in the Rutgers program. And I'm assuming like applications are opening soon. I've gotten a lot of messages about that as well. And so I kind of just wanted a space to connect with everyone. I kind of just like talk through like questions and connect. And so for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Vanessa Larmajest, and I work in the beauty industry as a beauty scientist and product developer. My background was in chemistry, and I have a master's in personal care science. And I used to be a cosmetic chemist for L'Oreal, working on hair care, skincare, and body care. And I think over the years, I've kind of built up, I would say, a personal brand around working in beauty, sharing like behind the scenes of like different events and trade shows I go to, while also just kind of highlighting different accomplishments I've had in my career, but always tying it back to a message for anyone else that's interested in the industry. And this last year, I've been doing a lot of content on LinkedIn, which has allowed me to become like a LinkedIn creator, which is really cool, and that's opened a lot of different doors. And so I just wanted a space to connect with you all. And so thank you for everyone that's kind of like shared their questions in the Google form. So we can either start with the Google form questions, or if anyone wants to just talk through any questions right now, it's whatever you guys want to do. Does anyone want to start, or do you want to just go to the Google form questions? All right, I will take the silence as Google Forms time. Okay, so one of the first questions, I believe this is from Mariz. Her question was, what is the value of getting a graduate degree in personal care science, and do you think it is worth it versus getting an MBA or an MS in a general field elsewhere? I definitely think, especially with my background as a chemist, getting the MBS in personal care was the best decision for me, because it allowed me to bridge the technical gaps, the technical experience I had with more business principles. And so I come from a very technical, like in the lab, like beakers, everything like that kind of background. And so as more of like a science person, you're not always like privy to things that impact business decisions, or like even marketing concepts, or what finance and accounting is. And through my graduate program, I was really able to kind of like understand those things. And I wouldn't say it was like as deep as like an MBA goes, but I think it was actually the perfect balance. So I don't look at it as like I got my MBA or I got my master's in science. I really believe the degree I got is more of a dual degree. And so it kind of like ties both sides. But I also think it's very valuable for someone working in a professional setting, so maybe something like more corporate, where there are technical elements to your job, but then there's also business needs. So I feel like it really like balanced me as an individual. And I also feel like it definitely allowed me, like I got promoted like twice after getting my graduate degree, so it definitely put me on a fast track for my career development for sure. One of these questions, this is from Lauren. This question is about the Rutgers MBS application. And so her question is, what are the most important aspects of my application to Rutgers that I should focus on? I definitely think if you're, regardless if it's the Rutgers program or just you're considering grad school in general, I think it's really important to speak to what drives you. So what are the trends you're seeing in industry that make you want to pursue this graduate degree, right? So I think a few years ago, the concept of like clean was like a budding kind of like field in beauty. And so like I think back then it's like, oh, if you were talking about like wanting to work for a company that was like really built on like sustainability and things like that, were definitely helpful to kind of like separate you from other applicants. But I think it's also good to double down on what you know. So if you have a specific background, or there's like specific research that you did somewhere, or maybe you have experience that's not in the beauty industry, but you're able to tie it into beauty, I think it also just speaks to your quality as an applicant. And I think what we fail to realize is that we actually don't want to be like everyone else when we're applying for grad school or a job, you want to like double down on the things that make you yourself, because those are the values and attributes that the program wants. They want like individualized people. They don't want everyone that's kind of like the same. So I hope that was helpful. And then another question in regards to the MBS is, did you complete the personal care MBS program while working? I did. So I did the MBS while I was working full-time at L'Oreal. So this is also a pre-COVID world, so things are a lot different now. But I would work, let's say like 9 to 5, and then commute to Rutgers about 45 minutes from my job, and then sit in class for like 2 to 3 hours. And I would say the way I was able to manage that was I always did 2 classes at a time. Like I didn't care if, I think in total it took me like 2 years after undergrad to finish, but I kind of like paced myself. I also took classes in the summer. I took a winter course, but like to me it was very important to kind of like keep the flow of the momentum I had from undergrad into graduate school. And then another question here is, what is something you wish you had been told when you started your journey as a cosmetic chemist? I think that's a great question because it depends on the company you work for. So when I worked for L'Oreal, being a cosmetic chemist, I didn't just work on the formula, right? So it was like I worked on formula, I worked with the packaging engineers, I worked with the patent team, I worked with the marketing team. So it's like really understanding that the title doesn't define the work that you do. I think it's more so the experience that you have and how you craft it to be your own. I was always very like outspoken and curious. I'm a naturally curious person. So I would always ask to be on like other projects or pose other people questions on their projects. And I think over time that just allowed me to grow a lot more organically. And so I think I guess to sum it up, it's like your title doesn't define you. It doesn't define your career. It's just an experience that you're having. And you can have that experience somewhere else and it'd be completely different. I definitely see a couple new faces joining, so just want to say hi to the new people who joined. I do want to take a break. Does anyone want to chime in with any questions so far, or should I just continue with the list? And don't be afraid, I don't bite. This is very friendly. Please ask, raise your hand, or I think you could raise your hand on here, or let me know. Okay, Franca, you have a question. Did I say your name correctly?
Yes, it's Franca.
Oh, Franca. Oh, I like that.
Thank you. So my question is, I hear this a lot. What do you mean by the technical side?
You mean
or the technical aspect of the degree?
Okay, so the MBS degree has a lot of product development components. So one of the first classes is like intro to product development. I took a fragrance class. I took I think one of my product formulation classes talked a lot about surfactant systems. So it talks more on like maybe like more science concepts and not just like, for example, it's like I have a product and like how am I going to market it? It's like, no, I have a product and then you have to reverse engineer the product. So that was like a lot of my assignments early on, where one week it was like take any shampoo you like, you have in your bathroom, and like theoretically reverse engineer it. So you separate it out based on components. You research like how products are made, what are like batching temperatures and what that process would look like. And then you'd be evaluated on how realistically that makes sense, which was really cool because it's like, depending on the type of product, it can be actually made several different ways. So does that answer your question on more of like the technical side?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, cool. So this question is from Yevenik. Am I saying it right?
Evenik.
Evenik? Mm-hmm. Are you Haitian?
I sure am.
I know that's right.
Remember? So we met at Fonta's event years ago.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you remember.
I know.
And then you had this jacket on and it had the palms, and I was like, "Are you Haitian?" And then that's how we connected.
Girl, that's my favorite leather jacket. It's in my closet right now. On its last leg. This might be the last season of that jacket, but
so cute. So cute.
Yeah, so her question is more focused on LinkedIn. So changing topics here. So one of her questions was, how do you plan your content strategy? That's a great question. Um, this is gonna sound crazy, but a lot of times it's just vibes. Like I kind of just like to go with the flow. Like beauty is also very news focused. So like it could be one week like talking about mergers and acquisitions, and like the hottest story is like L'Oreal just bought this company. And so I like to mirror like my content based on what's actually happening. So I'll usually like chime in on a news event, or a lot of things that I like to focus on are beauty tech. So if I'm going to an event that week, then it's like, okay, I'm going to post about the event. So I think it's like multiple ways. So like news, any events I'm attending, any personal accomplishments, and that could be like a new job, a product launch, follower count, a new program I got into, and then I think like sometimes I also like dive into like a hot topic, like something that might also like create conversation. So one of the posts I did a few weeks ago was about, if you guys remember, Sephora was sued by someone saying like, oh, the products that they say are clean are not clean, or something like that, based on their clean list. And the concept of clean is extremely subjective. Like the FDA does not define what clean is. Like no one person can define it. And so one of my posts was like, no, like to me, I thought it was complete BS. And I was like, no, clean is not always natural. And I kind of just like gave a hot take about that. But I also like to diversify the type of content. I love to film an unboxing video. So I'll film like an unboxing, or like a webinar that I'm like taking a part of. Like there was a company called, it's called Nutra Cosmetics or something. Tasla Nutra Cosmetics or something. And they sent me liquid collagen. And so it was like a webinar, but I used that as like a point of content, because I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I could just make like a video, but I definitely try to diversify the content and always try to do 3 posts a week. That was something I learned in the LinkedIn Creator Program, was 3 posts a week, different types of posts to keep like the audience engaged. And I definitely think I've seen really, really good results. Like to be very transparent, I started this year with like 550 followers. Today I'm at like 3,800 followers, and I plan to hit 5K followers by February is my goal. And then I want to hit 10K end of next year. And so it's like also considering it more like on a scale. So it's like once you reach one milestone, the next milestone also becomes a lot more achievable. The next question here is, how can an emerging natural skincare brand stand out in a saturated market? You have to know your audience, right? So it would be great that everyone wants to buy your product, but that's not realistic as you start out. So how do you find an audience, and how do you tap into that audience, right? So you could consider your audience like a gender. You can consider your audience a certain like age. Like if let's say you're young, you would ideally want your audience to be younger. Or if you have like a story that inspires you, and it's like, well, I'm making skincare because of my grandma, and then maybe you tap into like an older consumer. But I definitely think like knowing your consumer, knowing your market, and speaking to them in a way that they like, because it's all about likability. People buy products all the time from brands that suck, but that they like. And so it's like, yes, you want to deliver a quality product, but you want people to like you, and you want people to buy into your mission and vision. And so I think also having like a firm positioning on your mission is helpful. So for example, like I work at Beauty Counter, and people buy into the mission of Beauty Counter, which is to create clean and safe beauty products. And so our demographic, our target demographic, are people who really, really believe in that, and that's what they find important. Any other questions in regards to like content or like branding before I move on?
How? Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I saw somebody raise their hand, so.
Yeah, just a little question. Manisa, hi, my name is Avi.
Hi.
So I have been a synthetic chemist earlier, and I have done my master's in organic chemistry, but I'm relatively new in this industry. But I have switched successfully, and I'll be working in this industry. So what I would like to know from you is about the initial phases when you were also new in this industry. How did you like plan your job search, or how did you select in which part you wanted to work back then before you did your masters?
So I would say my story might be like a little different. So I interned for L'Oreal when I was in college. I interned in their applied research lab, which was more like upstream technology. So finding different like formula combinations and delivering a specific effect. So it wasn't necessarily that I was launching products, I was developing formula prototypes that could be put into a final format later. And then I got offered a full time job before I graduated. And to be honest, I didn't really look for a job. So I was like, yeah, I got a job at like the number one beauty company, so I'm gonna just go over there. Sometimes I think I should have like looked around a little bit more, but I would say when I started my career, it was all about just like learning. So regardless of, I actually started in hair color. I didn't want to work in hair color. I wanted to work in like the makeup lab or skincare. Like, but it was all about learning the principles. So just because you start somewhere doesn't mean that that's where you have to stay. It doesn't mean that's where you have to finish. But you have to learn and understand what you don't know. But I was working, like when I started, I was in graduate school at the same time. And I did like that because I was working and getting the hands-on experience, whereas graduate school teaches you things from a theoretical standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I would be taught a lot of like problem solving that would literally be applicable to what I'm doing the next day. And I noticed that there were chemists that I was working with that hadn't encountered a problem like that, right? Because a lot of times they're just working on a specific project with a specific deliverable. So I think going to graduate school really like rounded out my experience and allowed me to solve problems a lot faster, think a lot better on my feet. But I think it just was really awesome to do them at the same time, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also wanted to thank you for posting so many important contents on your LinkedIn. Like I personally, I get to know so much about it. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Is this being recorded? Yes, the session is being recorded. I hope I did it the right way. I'll be putting it on YouTube for everyone to reference later. Franca, I see your hand up. What is your question? Or do you have another one, or is this from before?
I think it was before. I think it was a mistake.
Okay, no problem. We can go back to the list. I don't know if Nadia is on. No, she's not on. Okay. So this question is, what jobs do you recommend while in school? I highly believe, I mean, I've said it before, but like I'm a very hands-on person. So to be fair, that's what works for me. I'm a very visual person. Like I need to like learn and like do it myself, whether I do it good or do it bad. That's how I learn. And so I think jobs that would be really great, working in the lab, of course. So whether it's an internship, externships, co-ops, like a lot of companies structured those kind of like work programs differently for entry level people. But I would also say like, don't just focus on the big companies. Like I know like it's always like, oh, like the L'Oreal, the Estee Lauder, and like Coty, but there's a lot of opportunity in beauty with private manufacturers, raw material suppliers, beauty incubators. So that's like another kind of like organization that a lot of people don't talk about, but there's a lot of companies that just create brands. So like they buy a really small brand, scale them and build them up and then sell them. And those are great learning opportunities because you can learn a lot really, really quickly. And I also think, so like right now I work in product development, and I think there's such a need for more people in product development who have a more technical or chemistry or biology focused background to kind of like bridge that gap between the brand and like what's technically feasible. I've seen this like so many times, like joining a company and it's like, oh, like, can we do this? And I'm like, no, because like, why would you put SPF in a body wash? Like that just like doesn't make sense. But for some people, they don't know like what an SPF should be doing or why it's utilized in like a leave-on format more as like whether it's like a lotion or a mist. And so it's like when you have that technical experience, you're able to save these companies a lot more money and a lot more time by quickly saying, no, this is not feasible. like, no, this wouldn't necessarily make sense in this product format. And I also think like consulting, right? Like everyone has a unique set of knowledge and experiences that someone will pay a lot of money for. So whether that's you're consulting with a company, you're consulting with a startup, that's an easy win. To kind of like get your footing in the door, but also like don't be afraid to seek free opportunities. And I know this might not sound the best, but shadowing is always something that, depending on the company, they might be open to doing, depending on the size as well. They may not necessarily have the funds to pay you, but being able to shadow a chemist on the bench or being able to shadow a product manager, that's a great experience as well. And I think, so there's like a lot of different ways you could tackle it. And I highly recommend LinkedIn to find those people doing the work that you're interested in as well. Awesome. Let's see. So this question is from Victoria. It says, with a background in biology and chemistry and years of experience in tech, but no beauty experience, what's the best way to get into beauty tech industry? I think if you're coming from the tech side, start there. So like seek out tech companies doing projects in the beauty industry. So they may not be developing products, but they might be developing softwares and applications and just tools to help the beauty industry. And I know it's like a weird way to like word it, but I use Google all the time. Like I'm a big proponent of using Google, just hopping on there and just finding new companies. But again, like I do have to say, I always go back to LinkedIn. And a lot of times there will be like events where you can like find someone working at one of these companies, and then that's how you make the connection and then network and then land that job. There's tons of beauty events throughout the year, and that's something else I'll be posting about really soon, is maybe just like sharing like a list of like the top beauty events, whether they're on the East Coast, the West Coast, because those are the ways in which you can meet a lot of amazing people doing really cool work. So fun fact, I don't know if I also mentioned this, but I'm an ambassador for the Good Face Project, and they are, how do you go about finding, a lot of times, because I've subscribed to a lot of like newsletters, a lot of times they just come to my inbox or like I'll see them on LinkedIn. But definitely one thing I'll do is put together like a list of top beauty events, because once you're kind of like following certain companies, you start to get like notified about those events. But going back to the Good Face Project, I actually met the business, I think now she's like a director of product on LinkedIn. So she was pitching me the software, and then I ended up leaving the company that I was working at the time, but we had a great connection, and so we maintained contact. And then she reached out to me to work for them, but I wasn't really like all the way on board just yet. And then I ended up meeting her at a trade show. Like they told me, hey, come to the trade show. And just very organically, like I came to the trade show and they were showcasing the technology to, it was at the New York Society of Cosmetic Chemists Suppliers Day. And so that's how like they started putting their name out there in terms of like, hey, this is a beauty tech application, and like helping from like a regulatory perspective. But something as simple as that, like they have a software that really helps people streamline how they evaluate products for safety and compliance. And if I wasn't like personally connected with her, I wouldn't have found out about that company at an event. And so it just speaks to like always being intentional too with your time, like making sure you go to the event and you're not just there to get like free products. Like talk to people, like ask them like, oh, like how did you get here? Where do you see this company going? You'd really be surprised like how many people just like to hear themselves talk and will share insights with you. Let's see. Alrighty. All right. I would love some questions from the audience. So anyone have anything they want to ask specifically that I may not have touched on just yet?
I'm not sure if you already answered this while my service went down, but is there any way that you have seen emerging natural skincare brands can emerge even further in such a saturated market?
I did answer this. I think it
You
was
did?
when you hopped off. But what I was saying essentially was like to know your audience. You really have to know who you want to buy this product, and communicate to them in a way that makes sense to them, right? So if like your target demographic is Gen Z, well, you have to meet them where they're at. Like where are they? Like online. They're at like events. They're at meetups, right? So it's like knowing your audience and knowing the value you want to provide to them, because the way you meet them is very different than if you were like let's say selling like a product that would like be put in like Neiman Marcus or something. Like that's a completely different like clientele. So really just knowing your consumer, knowing their habits, knowing what drives them, will allow you to connect with them a lot better. And I think when I mentioned that too, I also said it's like buying into the mission and vision of your company, because a lot of people buy products from brands just because they like the brand. The product could be very mid, but they like the brand so much that they'll continue to buy from the brand.
Thank you. And can I ask another question or?
Sure, go ahead.
So in one of your posts, you said that part of what fuels you is how beauty is being redefined and it's being defined by the individual versus what society says. So what's the other part that fuels you within your industry and what you do?
That's a great question. I think the other thing that fuels me is I don't know, I'm just a naturally like curious person, so I always, to me there's always something else, right? So like there's always like new, better, different. And I think when I first started in the industry, it was like, okay, like how do you make a beauty product? And then it was like, okay, like what makes a clean beauty product? And then it was like, okay, what makes it like a clean luxury beauty product? Like always kind of like upping the level of expertise, I think is what fuels me. It's like I'm a lifelong student. Like I probably will go back to school. Um, I will go back to school, speaking into existence. But it's like I love learning, and like now my big thing is like beauty tech, and I'm like I cannot wait to see what technology and beauty looks like in like the next 5-10 years, because I feel like there's such an interesting bubble happening, and like I don't know, for me it's just about never like being complacent. Like I like to keep learning and growing in my career. And I say that because I've worked with a lot of people. Like I've worked with some of like the best scientists, like literally in the world. And that's the thing. It's like they never stop learning. They're always growing. But then you see like the development of people who are just kind of like, you know, that maybe they're a little bit more content. They don't develop the same way. And I think I always just very early on like was like I'd rather be this person than that person. And so yeah. But great question. Great question.
Thank you.
Of course. Lauren, you have a question.
Yeah, so my main question touches on like what you were saying, where you think that there's like a need to bridge business and technical side. And right now I'm on the technical side, but I would love to be in a position that brings those two together. And I guess just to state it simply, what kind of position should I be looking for that like brings those two together?
That's a great question. So I think it depends on like what would you say you want to learn in like the next 2 to 5 years?
That's a good question too. I am kind of like a sponge. I just love learning like as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Like for example, I knew I wanted to go into cosmetic chemistry when I was in college, but I didn't know that I really had a passion for applications chemistry until I started working, and that's where I'm at now. But I think I would love to do something maybe that's either like customer based or managerial, or just kind of looking at the business side as well as like for the product development, because I do get to touch my toe in that, but only in the lab.
So for example, like I work with a lot of private labs, right? And one of the positions that I engage with regularly is like an account manager. And so the account manager will be like the in between the client and the private lab. And so they're managing the client relationship, which is bringing in business, right? So you keep your clients happy. They'll want to create and develop more products with you. And then they manage the project milestones and feasibility on the other side, where it's like, okay, well, they want to create this body butter. They want it to launch by this date. Are we having raw material challenges? Are we having stability challenges? Are we in a good position to commit to this launch? And so managing that relationship, I think, is great. I also think product development is a good in between, because it's like when you work really closely with the brand, it's always like, what are we launching? How can we launch it for X amount? What are the profit margins? And also, depending on the company, product development looks a lot different. So in the role I'm in now, product development works with the lab and product development works with marketing. In some companies, product development is a marketing function, and then they just work with labs. And so I think it really just depends on the company and the structure of the role, which is why whenever I'm interviewing, I always ask, like, well, who are my cross-functional partners, right? Because then it allows you to paint a picture of the resources you'll have in the role, but also like manage, well, how much work will I be doing? Is it more like creative work? Is it more like strategic? Is it like just like project management? So like it's a very interesting place to be in within beauty, because it can look so different. Also, like depending on the time of year, it can look very different. Like right now, like all of the labs we work with are closed, so it's more of project management I'm doing right now. Whereas in the beginning of the year, it's always like innovation, innovation, innovation. So like pitching new concepts, doing competitive analysis on top performing products. But it's always exciting, because I will say, like, no 2 days I've had are ever the same. Like, I'm never bored. It's like continuously stimulating. And I definitely say that's why I would like it. And I think too, was another like business development, depending on the company, could also be an interesting role for you, because it's like, well, we're taking the products that already exist in our portfolio. Are we scaling in other countries? Are we, looking at new ways that in which we communicate this? Are we looking at different retailers, right? So it's like you launching on .com is very different than when Sephora is like, hey sis, you want to put your products on our shelf? Like that's a very different conversation. But when you know your products, you can easily have that rapport and build that connection with Sephora for them to commit to giving you shelf space. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was extremely helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, awesome. What other questions do we have from the audience?
My question is, how did you pay for school while you were in it? Like, did you use your job, or did you have financial aid help you?
Great question. So in undergrad, I had like a lot of scholarships, so that helped me in undergrad. But in graduate school, I believe the first year, my parents and I paid for it out of pocket, because I had to be at L'Oreal for 1 year before they would pay for my graduate school. And so it was called tuition reimbursement. And so at the time they offered like $10,000 a year if you wanted to go to graduate school. But it also depends on the employer, because the reason I was able to do it was because the degree I wanted was relevant to the work that I was doing. So always just making sure like you understand like what the stipulations are from your employer. But from then on, like they paid for it. But I think from the first year when me and my parents paid for it, and then the next year L'Oreal paid for it, and I was like done the year after. So I only used the tuition reimbursement for like a full calendar year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Any other questions from the audience?
I have a question. How have you found the beauty industry on LinkedIn? I guess my main question is because LinkedIn seems to not be a place for beauty specifically, more like Instagram or TikTok or other places. So how have you found it to be? And I don't know if this relates to you, but in my case, I'm more concerned about like my colleagues. If I start posting like beauty stuff there and things like that. So I was just curious how that experience was for you.
That's a great question, and I think it's part of the thing that I love the most about LinkedIn, because it feeds you what you feed it, right? So when I first made my LinkedIn profile, I started following L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, Coty, and then you start to learn about like the publication companies. So like CEW, like they're like the cosmetic executive women, and so they are more like there's more of like a professional network, and so I started to follow them, and then I started to follow like I think it was like Happy's like a newsletter and website that always talks about like beauty, whether it's like ingredients, acquisitions, like different people getting different jobs. And so over time, by following a lot of those accounts, LinkedIn kind of just started giving me more beauty information. And I think it also goes back to, I know, I guess you're not working in beauty right now, but building a community and following a community of beauty people, right? Because then it's like once you see their posts and you're liking it and you're following them, it kind of leads you down a rabbit hole of like, oh, like what's that company that was tagged, and like who's this person? And so the more tapped in I think you are, the more you start to see it on your feed. And I think to your point that like I don't think LinkedIn is a platform that like promotes a lot of beauty content, but LinkedIn is a professional platform, so it promotes a lot of professional people in this space. So if like all the professional people you're following are beauty people, then your feed will start to look more like beauty news and insights and those kind of like interesting topics. But I agree it's not very like product focused, and actually like that. But also it's just like who cares? Like if you want, you can also just like you don't have to say like, hey, I want to work in beauty in your post. You can just post about beauty stuff, and as long as like you're doing your job well, people can't like say, oh, she like it can't like get you in trouble, like, you know what I mean? It's just like what you do, I think, outside of work is completely different than what you do during the day. I would just be careful if like maybe you work in a very strict environment that maybe you're not like, I guess, posting while you're at work. I do, but I don't feel like it's a negative because it actually helps me like know what's going on in the industry, which I like. Let's say I see a new product launch, I literally just put it in the Slack channel, like in my for my job, right? And so it kind of just like it kind of became a part of what I do on a day to day to like tap into the industry. But I say, listen, you only got one life. Live how you want to live. Like if people care that much about your content, then that means they don't have enough stuff going on to worry about themselves. So I would not let that stop you at all, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, Franca, it is. It's like it starts to become like your explore page. So like as you like certain things, it just kind of feeds it back to you. You can also follow like different hashtags on LinkedIn, which is cool. So it doesn't have to just be people or company pages. Like you can follow hashtags and then they start to pop up on your timeline as well, which is interesting. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions?
Can I add something to what you were
Sure.
just saying? So I think it's also valuable to look outside of your immediate circle. So if you are in the beauty industry, there are a lot of other industries that are right outside of that. And it can be fashion, it can be photography. There's a lot of those people look to collaborate to do work over time, depending, of course, on what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. But especially trying to start off getting more confident and more comfortable with this, it might help to surround yourself and surround your network with people who are, if you're not finding as many people directly in your field, find people directly outside of it, and they can even connect you to even furthermore.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, there are a lot of adjacent industries to beauty. And then it's also like the thing, it's like, there's like beauty itself. It's like technically I'm a beauty corporate person, right? But there's like makeup artists on LinkedIn. There's like hairstylists on LinkedIn. Like the way in which beauty is so like inclusive of like all levels. Like I've even been noticing a lot of like people who work as like beauty advisors, like connect with me on LinkedIn. It's like there's such a wide variety of people that you can connect with to kind of like keep your interest going for sure. Like it doesn't all have to be like people that work for a company. There's a lot of people that like support companies and maybe are more on like a contract basis, but are also still very well connected. Thank you so much. And that was great insight. Nadia, right? Is that how I say your name?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, great. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, please. Can you share any blogs that you follow outside of LinkedIn, like maybe on Instagram or TikTok?
Okay, so I I don't follow blogs, I would say. Okay, I'm lying. So on Instagram, I follow Estee Laundry, but it's more like tea. Um it's not like professional. It's like beauty gossip, but I would say to learn more, I would definitely look into Happy. It's like Happy Magazine, HAPPI. There's always like interesting articles from them. Then there's like Global Cosmetics and Personal Care. I believe that's another great resource. They also have a website and then like a newsletter that you can subscribe to. I mentioned Cosmetic Executive Women. They're always sharing content. There's two other more niche ones. One is called Beauty Independent. They have a LinkedIn page, but you can also subscribe to their newsletter. And then Beauty Matter, um, I think are both really great. Like I think they're a lot newer too than some of the other like beauty news websites. I think like Allure, like the traditional like Allure magazine, they always post about beauty. Like they have tons of beauty editors. Um, and then Birdie. So Birdie has been posting a lot of beauty content as well. And I'm pretty sure like you can follow them on like Instagram or TikTok, but they also have like websites and they also have newsletters that you can subscribe to. So I think it's more so like how you like to receive content. If it's easier for you to do it on Instagram, I'm sure all of those companies have like an Instagram page. If you're more of like send it to my inbox and I'll like sit and read it, sign up for their like newsletters. And then I can't really say like I use TikTok not necessarily for beauty, so I'll have to get back to you on that one on like who to follow and stuff like that on TikTok. But you can follow me. Sometimes I post about stuff. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So so I know I posted this for 2:30, but apparently Google, based on the size, only lets you stay for like an hour. So we do have about like 10, maybe like 10, 12 minutes. I don't know if it'll like totally shut off, but definitely encouraging more audience questions. I feel like I talked through a lot of the questions from the list. Yeah. Oh, there's one question here I think that's great. What's the best way to find a mentor in the beauty space? Um, I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but LinkedIn, like I promise you, like all the mentors I have are from LinkedIn. Let's put it that way. Like I've met women who are like associate directors, who are like VPs, who are like, really killing it in the work that they do, and I've been able to meet them predominantly from LinkedIn and like messaging them. So like let's say, for example, one of my mentors is Jamila. Um, she was doing like an event and then I thought like everything she said was really cool and I messaged her on LinkedIn and now she's been my mentor for like 2 years. Um, there's another mentor I have. Her name is Unique Chen. She's like an OG in product development. When I wanted to work and specifically switch from the lab to product development, I looked for black women who worked in product development because I felt like if I could find black women who worked in product development, it would make me feel like this is more achievable. And so I sought specifically black women to learn from. And then, by like just presenting myself like, hey, I'm not asking for a job. It was more so like to pick your brain, understand like your process. A lot of times you'll notice people will organically offer to mentor you and guide you and coach you. And so I think always presenting it more so like from a place of learning. And then if you feel like, the vibes are great, seek mentorship. There's also been tons of women I've reached out to that never responded back to me. Or we did have a chat, but then kind of like ghosted me. And I'm like, okay, girl, you're lost. Like, but it's like these things will happen. But just knowing like who you can like lean on, I think is really important. And I think too, it's just like the internet allows us to access people that live in different coasts, live in different countries. And so it's worth doing the work and like connecting with those people to build those relationships. I think we have a few more hands raised. Marie, would you like to go?
Yes. So, currently I'm doing my graduate studies at University of Miami in chemistry. So it's very broad. And now I'm working with a nanomaterial, and I'm trying to relate it into beauty because that's what like I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And well, my like group, research group and mentor, he's very like he's not like he has done beauty research before, but it's not really his lane.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like how can I go about finding people, I guess, to help with the like my research project and like that has a beauty more of a beauty background?
I would definitely suggest partnering with another university that focuses on cosmetic formulations and product development. So I know, like, I think it's like University of Cincinnati. They have a big beauty program. Like Fairleigh Dickinson University has a beauty program. I think some people at Rutgers do. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But like, I would say just research another institution and like partner with them if like legally that's okay. And the only reason I say an institution is because sometimes if you look to partner with like a corporation, it becomes like weird and like it's more like, oh well, you should just work for us, and like you want to maintain that ownership and independence. So I highly suggest looking at other universities, and don't be afraid to look outside of the country as well. Like I think cosmetic chemistry and like product development is blooming in other countries. Like I know there's like a program out in UK now, and so I would say like do that, or you can also connect with people doing. I'm going to just assume. Let's say this is like skin related. You can like look into working with a dermatologist. You could look into working with a private consultant. I definitely think there's ways in which you can do it and look for expertise externally than what you're currently getting, for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Nadia, would you like to ask a question?
Oh, yeah. I was in the middle of typing like something to what you were saying, but I'll just get that out of the way. But I was gonna say, there's a lot of third world countries right now that are developing with their beauty industry, like a lot. And sometimes, like, if you can't get anything where you are, reach out to something somewhere there, like an institution there, whatever you can find there, because you will get some positive responses if you're already doing your work in your field, and someone is going to be willing to have you on to partner with them. If you don't let your green grass or your four walls limit you from where you can go.
I
But
completely agree.
my question was going to be that in terms of like the finding mentors part, like do you know about a community that is dedicated to people looking for just more beauty help and advice and like getting to the more professional side of it? I ask because I run a nonprofit organization where we focus on providing resources, not providing resources, but connecting people with resources, people who are in underserved communities, and it's really all at like one network at a time.
Okay.
So, like I'm always looking to learn. I'm not particularly in the beauty field, but I'm always looking to learn about all the other fields that I haven't covered yet with my organization, and kind of help people, rediscover their imagination and like how they can really learn and get help, and people they can just ask about these things. So, do you know about any communities that are well known for like being able to reach out to someone in the profession?
I know there's a org. It's like 25 Black women in beauty or something like that. It's on Instagram. Then there's the Black Beauty Club, which is based out of New York. I can't say there's like a official like organization or nonprofit that does focus on that. I definitely think there's a need, but I definitely think there's more like online beauty circles that do exist. And I think too, you can always put like a call out, like post something on LinkedIn and say, hey, looking for XYZ. And you never know who's watching, you never know who can share and kind of like amplify your message. But aside from Black Beauty Club, which is Instagram based, and 25 I think it's 25 Black women in beauty. I'm pretty sure it's something like that. Also Instagram based. I can't say there's like an official one that I'm aware of, unfortunately.
That's fine. I was just curious because obviously the whole point of our organization is kind of like helping to bridge the gaps between things that don't exist or things that exist but people don't know about.
Yeah.
So trying to find where they do exist and who knows about them and how to get them to a wider reach of an audience to help. Like this is incredible, having a group of women here who are interested in knowing, and then you have your time that you are sparing for us to learn more things that we wouldn't get on a daily basis. And these are like the more everyday things I seek to connect people with.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next, we have Evanique.
I love how diverse your career experience has been. I feel like it's not necessarily a traditional trajectory. So, what else do you see in the future trajectory of your career? And do you currently advise on any boards for beauty brands?
Great question. I'm about my money. So, eventually, I actually want to go into venture capital. That's like what I want to do. Like after I take on technology, I'll be like a VC girly. So yeah, like and then like I said, you see like it's so different, right? But I think that'll allow me to say I've like seen it all, done it all. That's really just important to me. Like I said, like it's all about just learning and growing. But yeah, I definitely want to be like a company. Like I don't say a brand founder because this is going to sound crazy. I do not aspire to have my own brand of beauty products. I want to be a tech founder and like create solutions to current problems that beauty consumers are facing. And so that's definitely like on the horizon for me. And then, like I said, becoming like a VC girly.
For sure. Good to know. I work for Techstars and I'm an investment associate / program manager. So we can.
Oh, we about to kiki. Oh, we kikiing. Oh, we.
Yeah.
And I know we only have 2 minutes, but I definitely wanted to say thank you so much to everyone that hopped on. This is very super like informal. I just kind of wanted to get a pulse of like things that my community were interested in. And also just to shout out, like I do offer like coaching if you want to like work a little bit more one-on-one. I also have like a group coaching program that I'll be rolling out. So definitely here if you want to connect if you have like an interview coming up, you want to talk about like a career navigation or like, listen, I've been promoted, I've lost my job, I've doubled my salary. Like I've done it all to the point where it's like, now I really just want to focus on providing that insight to people who need it and you don't need to go through hardships. You don't need to like to struggle. Like there's a lot of gems and there's a lot of tea that can be shared. And so I really just want to say thank you so much. I'm hoping the recording recorded the way it was supposed to, and I'll be putting this session up on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.